Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few months, you've probably heard of tools like Claude Code, OpenClaw, but you're probably wondering, how can you use these systems in your manufacturing company? And that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video today. Over the past year, I've built over a dozen custom software tools for manufacturers, building quoting systems, scheduling dashboards, inventory trackers, customer portals, and building real working tools that people in these manufacturing companies are using every day. Today, I'm going to show you 7 tools that every manufacturer could be building themselves, and none of them would require a single developer unless you're a mid-size or an enterprise company that would need the security of an enterprise application. In no particular order, but I think a couple of these, as we'll cover later on in the video, are better and more important than others. But we'll have a field service report generator, we'll have an inventory and purchasing dashboard, a production scheduling dashboard, a spare parts lookup tool, a customer portal, an RFQ intake system, and a configuration and quoting tool. So kind of like a CPQ system, which I have mentioned in other videos. So firstly, you're probably wondering, like, what even is vibe coding? What are people talking about when they say vibe coding? Well, vibe coding is essentially using AI tools like Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot, Codex to build real software by describing what you want in conversational language. And this means that you don't need to write code yourself. The AI will actually build that code as long as you've described the problem and the workflow that you're actually trying to solve. This is a really big deal for manufacturing companies because a lot of the times manufacturers are using old software tools from the 90s or sometimes even the 80s because it's been really hard for them to replace those software tools. It's really expensive for them to go and hire consultants or to bring in software systems like SAP or Epicor. And often those systems don't actually fit exactly what it is that they need. So by building custom software, you can build software that's built around your actual processes and your products, rather than trying to jam your products and your processes into somebody else's system that wasn't really designed for how you work and how your products are built. And something that's great about this is you don't actually have to rip out your ERP system. You don't need a cloud migration. You can actually build these custom modules to sit on top of your existing systems, where your ERP stays as the system of record, which is the backbone of your entire company. But your team is able to use these tools that can then interface with your system of record. So they've got nicer interfaces, nicer dashboards. They can build automations on top of these systems. And these systems can be custom built exactly to how your business works. So I'm going to walk you through these 7 use cases, these 7 tools that I think are the most beneficial for manufacturing companies. And hopefully these are some systems that you can get some value from. And at the end of this video, I think that you should try to take one of these systems and try to build it out for your manufacturing company. And in future videos, I will cover the whole process of how you can build these systems yourself. But I did want to show you some use cases first. So before I jump into the specifics of those systems, I just want to show you the demo company that I'm building these systems around. So I've taken an average manufacturing company, let's say, and I've turned it into kind of a demo where you've got, this, let's say, this hoist and crane company that does about $50 million in revenue. They've, got pretty low margins, so 20% gross margins, 15% win rates, and they build a bunch of different configurable products. Some are engineered to order, some are configured to order, and some are standard off-the-shelf products. So here are the 7 tools that we're going to cover in this video. So starting with the field service report generator. The purpose of this system will be for your field service team to manage all of the field service visits that they're doing. You'll see that in this system, you have kind of the open or the upcoming field service visits that this person is going to have. And you'll also have the reports that they're building for their customer out in the field, as well as any reports that they've built for your customers in the past. And the purpose of having a system like this is to automatically generate a high quality standardized report for your customers at the end of your field service visits, because your team often collects a lot of information that's really valuable to your customer while at the site. But it's not often that all of that information will get passed on to the customer at the end of the visit. Let me show you how this will work. So if you take this, for example, this particular field service visit for this crane company, they'll have a few steps of inspection here where they enter some information, and they would likely tend to enter some images and so on in these sections as well. For example, here, I can have an image that I can upload here. So let's scroll all the way through, click through next step at each point. And then at the end, once I've added all of that information, I can then click to generate a report, and it'll go back through all of the information that was collected during that field service visit. And it'll create this standardized report that has all of the information that was collected as well as some recommendations such as recommended parts, potentially a recommended service contract that it's pushing the customer towards. And the idea here is that you're giving a high value report that has ROI estimates and so on, but you're also then giving an opportunity for your team or for your company to sell some downstream services or downstream parts, which can have high margins for your company. So you're adding value, but you're also making an offer at the end of the day. So this field service report tool can be really valuable. Second tool we're going to jump into is an inventory and purchasing dashboard. And what you can do here is essentially look at all of the items that will be in your company's inventory. So you'll be able to see all of the SKUs that are tracked. You can also, if you have your own system like this, you can also show different fields, or you can show what machines or what products each of these parts is used on. Essentially, the bounds of what you can create when you build a system like this, custom for yourself or custom with a custom software company, you can pretty much build whatever it is that you're trying to build. Even, being able to look specifically at individual parts and look at the min-max levels of those parts, look at the purchase histories and being able to see all the prices that you've paid for these items in the past. And having this data visible to your team means that they can look at things like this and see, are there any status critical parts in here? Okay, cool, I've got one. Let me go and create a purchase order for that part. So they can go and have a look in here as well, where you've got, a list of potential items that they could purchase and who they can get that from, and the prices that they could get that from. So you can tie this into seller portals and so on from particular companies that you tend to buy from if they have APIs and so on. So moving on from inventory and purchasing, then you can have a scheduling system. So now that you understand all of the min-max levels of your parts and which parts you have on hand, you can start to look at each of your projects and start to map out the Gantt chart here, as you can see, that shows all of the products in terms of where they're going to be, in terms of which work center and so on. And again, being able to customize this to have all of the work centers that you have in your business, all of the capacity constraints that your business has to follow, you can build a pretty cool system in here that has all of this information that you can then use to continually improve your process, continuously improve the capacity utilization of your company, and track any items that look like they're getting off track and so on. So you can make sure that you can stick to your lead times and not kind of have a low on-time delivery rate. Moving on to that, then you can have a spare parts lookup tool here. So let's say, for example, your company sells spare parts and maybe you have a configurable piece of equipment that has thousands of potential parts that could be on each machine. Oftentimes you can look at selling kind of a list of critical spares, which can be something that you could sell after a field service visit. But the purpose of this tool will be to help your parts team to create quotes really quickly. So you could have images of these parts in here as well, which might help your team when trying to figure out what is the part that you're trying to quote. But you can also start to build out quotes for these. So let's say, for example, I wanted to look at building a quote here, and I'll just select a few different parts. I can now go and create a quote. So, very quickly, I can send this quote now to the customer. I can store it on my ERP system. None of this like clicking through 20 or 30 different pages. All I have to do is, tag the workflow, click the parts that I want, send the quote, really improve the speed and the efficiency of any of these workflows. And bear in mind that all of these systems are very customizable. You can build it in any way you want. Maybe this isn't exactly how you would want your spare parts tool to work, but as I say, you can build this pretty much in any way that you would want to. So moving on then to what a customer portal might look like. So imagine you have a customer portal where your manufacturing reps or your distributors or potentially your end customers are able to sign in. They could view all of their orders, all of the documents within the system. They can look at anything related to service visits or service requests, and potentially they can even request quotes right within this system here. So looking at this order tab, one of the beauties of this is that if you can set your company up such that you can have these handoff points and these job packets that are always tagged when they move from stage to stage, you can look at giving your customer visibility, kind of like a Domino's pizza tracker, showing them the progress of the part or the machine that they have going through your manufacturing process. So you can give them the target ship dates, you can tell them how far along things are, and you can also give them all of the documents that they would need, such as quote numbers, such as confirmations and so on, all within this system. For parts or maybe machines that you've sold them in the past, I know that a lot of manufacturers often get calls being like, hey, I don't know where my manuals are. And you can give them a system like this that has all their drawings, all of the manuals and everything like that within their member portal. So nobody has to call your team or bug your service department in order to find information that they have on their particular machine. As we showed you earlier on the kind of service visit report system, you could give your customer access to all their field service visits right within this app. And then finally, you could have a request for quote system, which I'm going to show you exactly how that would work in just a second. So the request for quote system, which we have covered in a couple of videos in the past, links to those videos will probably pop up on screen here. A request for quote system is essentially like the system that sits on your website that enables your customer to request a quote and to give you some information about what it is that they're looking for. A typical RFQ system is often just a contact us form, but if you build a system like this and put it onto your website, it helps your customer firstly understand, what it is that you might be able to sell to them. But it also walks them through the process of collecting some more information that helps your team when they finally go to actually configure that quote. So let's just skip through here and I'll just show you kind of how this would work. So I can enter all of this information here, and you notice it only takes 30, 40 seconds for me to go and click through all of these items. So it's not like you're really burdening your customer with getting to add a ton of information. You're actually making it pretty streamlined and seamless in order to do this. And then they can send you an RFQ that will then go into your CRM system, or potentially it'll go directly into your configure price quote system, where one of your teams in this example, or one of your team members in this example is that John. No, John is from Acme, but your team member can then go into your configure price quote system, which will allow them to configure all of the different options that John had asked for in the quote that he had requested. And the really nice thing about a configure price quote system is that it can store all of the buildable or unbuildable configurations that you're able to manufacture in your company. So for example, if we look at this, if I select that I want to go for a 65 foot span, it's going to tell me that the maximum that I can go is 60. So I'll go back here and I'll maybe select the double girder, and now I can go up to 70 feet. So the benefits here is that you're able to sell more standardized equipment, less of this custom equipment, custom one-off equipment, meaning that you can increase the capacity of your factory by building more standardized equipment and by having more of the inventory on hand that you need in order to build different systems. So the benefits really of CPQ being you can quote faster, you can get more accurate quotes to your customer, you can increase the overall capacity of your factory by selling more of these standardized products, as I said. And you can also give your customer more accurate lead times, because if you have access to that scheduling system, you'll be able to see based on the current schedule of your factory when a quote might be able to fit into that process, especially when you're thinking about, are you going to have the inventory on hand in order to service whatever it is that person was looking for. So the output of what you would get from a CPQ system, if I just click through the last couple of options here, will be to get a quote like this, which I can then download or I can send directly to the customer. And I can enter all of this information directly into my ERP system automatically by having an API call or some other form of automation set up on the back end. Some of the benefits that we've seen companies get from having a CPQ system and being able to quote faster is pretty big win rate improvements. We've seen like 5 to 10% percentage point win rate improvements, just because companies went from like a week on average to get back to their customers down to 1 or 2 days in order to get back to their customers. And that is mostly driven by the fact that if you have all of your configurations stored in a simple system like that, where your sales team can see what is buildable or not buildable, they don't have to bug engineering. You don't have these back and forth conversations and negotiations happening between your sales and engineering departments, which could mean a huge improvement in terms of your overall revenue and potentially your overall profit, given that, any additional units that you can get out the door might be more profitable than, your first 50 units of the year. So we've covered all 7 systems there. All of these systems will have huge benefits on their own, but something to bear in mind is that these systems also start to form a bit of an ecosystem. So you'll have your RFQ intake taking information that gets fed into your quoting tool, your CPQ system. Your quoting tool then starts to feed information into your scheduling dashboard. Your scheduling dashboard can pull information from your inventory system. Your inventory system can tell your purchasing department what they should order and when they should order it. Your customer portal can show your customers the information in terms of when their order might be getting to them, which means you're going to have less calls coming into your service department. Your field service department will also be able to loop back into kind of increasing your spare parts demand. And your spare parts team can quote faster because they've got a system that enables them to order parts a lot faster. So this is how an ERP system is supposed to work and how it should have been set up to work. Unfortunately, I would imagine if you're watching this video that this probably hasn't been the case for you. But the good news is that you can actually change that now in 2026. Building software is now significantly more scalable and faster than it has been in the past. So it's not like building all these systems would take 3 to 5 years or, like a 2-year migration process. You can likely build systems like this and start getting value from them within a couple months. So as I said, best thing for you to do when you're finishing watching this video is to just think about one of these systems that I talked about. Pick one system that really frustrates you or keeps you up at night and causes a lot of problems in your business. See if you can go into a tool like Claude Code or go into Cursor, maybe even go into a simpler system like Bolt, and see if you're able to start building out the requirements for what it is that you would need that system to do. And try to get really granular, try to map out the workflow from start to finish, build out a value stream map of where you're adding value at each of these points, what data needs to be brought into each of these systems, and what information needs to get passed from the current node that you're building into the next node downstream of it. And if you can start to build out a system like that, you can show it to people on your team, you can show it to other people in your company, and you can start to maybe get a bit of a culture going of looking at opportunities to use AI and to use generative coding systems to start building better systems for you and your team internally. I definitely want to mention that you should be a little bit cautious when using these tools, especially maybe not feeding them with specific context or specific files that you wouldn't want to share with anybody else outside of your company. Start with something that doesn't have as much of your company's IP in it, for example, because we don't necessarily know what these public AI systems are using your data for. We currently build inside of a more proprietary system where we don't have to give that data to the model providers. And if you want to have access to that kind of security, that type of enterprise security, you can shoot us a message. I hope this video was useful. If it was, please drop a subscribe, drop a like, whatever it is that you can do. Anything that you can do can help to share this video out to more and more people in the manufacturing space to help spread the news and spread the word about what is possible with AI in 2026.